Welcome to my tutorial on how to create a circuit board in Lightwave 3D and Photoshop. I had a project recently where I had to create a kind of generic PCB. I wasn't going for, totally realistic, but something that could be convincing enough from a distance without having all the legwork of building your own circuit board. And after a bit of digging, I came across this website called copen.io, and it's filled with heaps of scripts. And this one allows you to build your own circuit board. So we've got a load of controls here which changes how the circuit board looks. So we've got one here for cell size. The lower the cell, the more detail, and the smaller the little nodes are. So, and then we've got one for wire length. So this has really long wires across everything. Cut-off length and straightness. So we can just keep generating until we see something that we like. Let's have a bit more detail on there. Kind of like these long straight lines. That looks good. So once you're happy with the look of it, come up here to change view and hit the full page view. And also on your browser, you want to go full screen. I'm just going to press F11 here. So we're going to save this image out, so we need the highest resolution possible. So I'm just going to right click and save this image. Save that over my old version, and then we'll come across to Photoshop. Here we are. So what you can see here is this is looking great, but we've got a bit of clipping around the edges here of some of these nodes. So what I'm going to do is just expand the canvas size by coming to Image, Canvas Size, and just going to chuck like 105% on there for each axis. That's going to just give us a little bit of a border there. So if I come in and create a new layer, and I'm just going to color pick this background green and fill that. You can also go to edit fill for this. Foreground color, then drag that into the background, and we've got a nice little background color and a bit of a border on the circuit board there. So I'm going to merge those two, select both and Control E. So now we need to fix this clipping. So what I'm going to do is just select a black here, and I'm going to make a vector circle and just copy one of these, and I'm going to put a stroke on that. You can see I've done this before, so we're just colour picking that the lane colour, and we've got this set to outside. You can see that, so probably something about 5 pixels looks about right. So I'm now just going to drag these into position just to kind of fix those clipped nodes. So if I hold Alt and Shift and then use the arrow keys, I can just make a copy and drag that into position. Or you can just hold Alt and left click and drag. So let me finish off the rest of these and I'll get back to you in a few moments. Okay, so there we are. Nice clean circuit board image now. We've got a border around the nodes, and we've tidied up all these kind of errors that we had here. So I'm just now going to select everything and merge that down, and we've got our image. I'm just going to save that now, and that will be our circuit board color. So what we're going to do next is we need to pull out all of this detail here so we can place actual geometry where each one of these nodes appears. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use the select color range function, a setting of 50 here, and I'm just going to color pick that black dot there, and you can see we've got all those selected now. So I'm going to just press Ctrl J to pull those out into their own layer, and Control click on the layer, so we've got those selected. And now right click within the selection, make work path, tolerance of 2, that's fine. So now we have a vector shape for every one of these little nodes. So I'm going to save that by File, Export, Paths to Illustrator, and PCB AI will be fine. Okay, so let's just get rid of that work path now. I don't need that anymore. So what I'd also like to do is create a mask so that we can texture the backing for the board and the metal lanes differently. So if we go to our layer, and we'll do color range again, and this time select the lane, and then we're just going to Control J, get it onto its own layer, and then I'm going to just give it a color overlay, and I'm going to give that background a color overlay as well. This time set it black, and that essentially gives us a mask now to control the different materials. You can see we've got a bit of alias in there, so I'm just going to place a bit of a blur on that. Gaussian blur, let's try 0.6, 0.8 maybe. That'll be fine. I'm sure you could spend more time on this than I am. So I'm going to save that out now, and that will be our PCB mask. So that's about everything we need to do in Photoshop now. So we can head over to Modeler, and we can start building our circuit board mesh. So first off, I'm going to come to the image editor and load the images we've just created. So we can see here we've got our size, which is 2016 by 1066. So I'm going to use those numbers to create my mesh. And for numeric, I'm going to go 20.16 by 10.66, and we'll just center that. Okay, and I'm going to just give that a tiny bit of depth. Let's go for 0.1. Okay, so let's just shove a quick UV on that. I'm going to come to T for texture, new, and I'm just going to leave that at planar mapping in the Y, create, and now we've got our UV texture there. So into the Surface Editor, just for quickness, I'm going to set this to standard, and I'm going to apply our texture here with the UV. You can see now we've got our circuit board texture applied. So what I'm going to do next is bring in the vectors that we produced by load, import, EPS. I'm going to set this to standard, close polys, then find my AI file, hit OK, and these have come in aligned with Y, so I'm just going to make sure that I rotate this around the origin. So I'm just going to set this here to be origin, and then hit R to rotate. Now, fingers crossed, these should now be exactly aligned with our nodes that we created, which is brilliant. So a bit of housekeeping. I don't really want these as polys, I'd prefer these as verts. So if I come to construct, more, collapse polys, and now we've got a vert hopefully in the center of every one of those little nodes. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move this up to the surface there, and I'm going to copy this and paste it into a new layer, and I'm going to move that to the rear. So that means we can place components on one side, and then on the other side we can place kind of solder or something like that. So let's just name these layers. So we've got PCB, components, and solder. Okay, so let's save that. So I've gone ahead and I've actually downloaded these online just for quickness, but we've got some little kind of components. We've got chips and resistors and stuff like that, so I'm going to just use those. You can add as many of these as you want, of course. So I'm going to send this now to layout. Right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to load in the PCB parts, and I'm just going to come in the scene editor, and I'm going to just move these out of the way so we can see what we're doing. So first off, we'll select our PCB components where we're going to apply an instance generator. So P for properties, instance generator. We're going to start off by just adding one of these PCB parts. We'll set that to shaded solid, points, max points. And you can see they're offset. It's because I've got world position here, so I'm going to just set that to local, and you can see they snap. And that means we can move these out the way when it comes to render, and we're not going to end up with parts in the middle of our circuit board. So let's just do some scaling here. I'm going to offset them. Something like that is fine. So let's add object. We'll go for a chip this time, and we can just literally copy the settings here. So copy settings, paste, and let's just, there we go, we need to just have that at 0, and let's change the weight here to be like 20. Even less than that for these, isn't it? 5%. There we go. And the scaling will be fine. So I'll just keep adding objects now. Let's go for one of these. Paste settings. And pull the weight down here. Set the rotation. Keep adding objects. Let's go for a large chip this time. I think we've got our offset too low. That's it. And let's go for scale. 20 and 100, and then pull the weight down again. That's it. So let's add one of these capacitors, paste settings. Only want very few of these. So obviously you can keep adding elements to your heart's content, really. Okay, so I've gone ahead and added a few more elements to this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to load the solder object, and if we just flip over to the bottom, we're going to select the PCB solder, add another instance generator, and we're going to add solder. Type is points, max points. You can see them all appearing there, and we'll set that to local, shaded solid, and I think we're going to have to rotate them 180 in pitch. There we go. So let's scale these up slightly. We'll go some bigger than others, I guess. Something like that. Let's just reduce the stretching. Just squash them down slightly. -50. There we go. So there we can see we've got a nice looking kind of back into the board with the solder parts on it, and they match up exactly with our components above. I mean, it's certainly convincing enough. If you were to just build sort of generic objects and you need something to look like it's got a lot of detail, it's a nice easy way of producing this. Okay, now so we're going to try and make use of the maps that we created. So I'm just going to enable Octane here. Obviously you can just use the native renderer. This is just my preference. Okay, so I'm just going to select my PCB here. I'm just going to apply a universal material to that and have a look in the node graph. So what I want to do is first off I'm just going to create a texture image and PCB color. I'll put that in transmission to connect that to albedo. And what I'm going to do is just create a second version of this. So one is going to be our lanes, the other will be the circuit board. So if I create then a material mixer, and we'll connect both of these materials into that. And then if we copy and paste this node, select our mask, we can then have control over both things. So if I just show you, this is our lanes now, and the bottom one is the board itself. So we can start to add some roughness. Let's copy this one and just plug this into roughness here and invert that. And our board, I'm going to just, there we go, you can see now I've got a difference in those materials. So next I'm going to try and raise these lanes up slightly. So I'm just going to copy and paste this one, and I'm going to add that to the bump, and I'm just going to invert that. It's looking nice already. So that about wraps things up. We've got a reasonable looking circuit board with a few textures on. We've got the underside of the board with the solder parts, which looks really nice, and it's not a difficult process, so hopefully you'll create something even better than this. Okay, see you next time.